Right now, at this very moment, a quiet economic earthquake is rushing through American ports, and almost nobody is talking about it. Malaysia, a country most Americans couldn't locate on a map if their mortgage depended on it, just made a trade decision that's sending shockwaves through industries from Detroit to Silicon Valley. We're not talking about tariffs or political posturing. We're talking about something far more calculated, far more permanent, and far more terrifying for the U.S. economy. What Malaysia just did isn't just cutting trade. It's severing a dependency that America didn't even realize it had. And here's what makes this absolutely chilling. The reason behind this move isn't what economists predicted, isn't what the media is reporting, and isn't what your gut is telling you right now. It's something that reveals a massive blind spot in how America views its place in the global economy. A blind spot that could cost millions of jobs, reshape entire supply chains, and accelerate an economic power shift that's already years ahead of schedule. Before I reveal what's actually happening, if you want to stay ahead of economic shifts that the mainstream media won't cover until it's too late, hit that subscribe button and turn on notifications. Because what you're about to discover will change how you see America's economic future forever. Section 1. The Silent Severance. On September 12, 2024, Malaysia's Ministry of International Trade and Industry issued a directive that received exactly 47 seconds of coverage on American financial networks. Buried in the administrative language was a systematic restructuring of harmonized system trade classifications, the actual coding system that governs what products move between nations. But here's what those 47 seconds didn't tell you. Malaysia wasn't just reorganizing paperwork. They were strategically reclassifying and deprioritizing trade routes for specific high-value exports to the United States, while simultaneously opening preferential channels to China, the ASEAN bloc, and even emerging African markets. This wasn't bureaucracy. This was economic surgery, and America was the patient being quietly removed from life support. Malaysia is the world's seventh largest exporter of semiconductors, controlling roughly 13% of the global back-end chip assembly and testing market. The unglamorous but absolutely critical final stage that turns silicon wafers into the processors inside your phone, your car, your medical devices. According to the Semiconductor Industry Association's 24 data, over $23 billion worth of Malaysian semiconductor products were destined for American tech manufacturers in 2023 alone. Now imagine those supply chains quietly being redirected, not cut entirely, but deprioritized just enough that delivery times extend, costs increase, and American companies start looking less attractive as buyers. This is exactly what's happening right now. Malaysia isn't making enemies. They're making calculated business decisions based on a future where America is no longer the most reliable, most profitable, or most strategically valuable trading partner. And that future? It started 18 months ago. Section 2. The real reason. The part they're not telling you. Here's where your brain is probably jumping to conclusions. This must be about Trump's tariffs, or Biden's foreign policy, or China's influence. Wrong, and partially wrong. The actual reason Malaysia is systematically restructuring its U.S. trade relationship is something economists at the Peterson Institute for International Economics identified in a March 2024 report. But that virtually no one outside policy circles understood the implications of. America's domestic demand volatility has become a liability. Between 2020 and 24, the United States experienced three separate demand shock cycles: pandemic lockdowns, supply chain rebounds, then inflation-driven consumption crashes. For a manufacturing-dependent economy like Malaysia, this isn't just annoying. It's existentially expensive. When you're running semiconductor foundries, palm oil refineries, or electrical equipment factories, you need predictable, steady demand to justify the billions in infrastructure investment. China, despite its own economic challenges, offers something America no longer does: centrally coordinated long-term purchase agreements. In 2023, China signed a 7-year semiconductor procurement deal with Malaysian suppliers worth $67 billion. The kind of guaranteed revenue stream that lets companies plan, invest, and expand. America? We operate on quarterly earnings reports, congressional budget battles, and consumer spending that swings wildly based on whatever crisis is trending that week. A 2024 study from the National Bureau of Economic Research found that U.S. import demand has become 34% more volatile since 2019 compared to the previous decade. For exporters, that volatility translates directly into risk, and risk translates into higher costs, which Malaysia is no longer willing to absorb. They're not punishing America. They're protecting themselves from America's chaos. Section 3. The cascading collapse nobody saw coming. Now here's where this gets genuinely frightening. Because Malaysia isn't operating in isolation. They're part of a coordinated, though not conspiratorial, pattern among Southeast Asian economies that's been building since late 2022. Thailand reduced agricultural exports to the US by 11% in 2023, while increasing them to China by 19%. Vietnam, despite being positioned as the great alternative to Chinese manufacturing, saw its US-bound electronics exports growth rate drop from 28% in 2021 to just 8% in 2024, according to the General Statistics Office of Vietnam, while intra-ASEAN trade grew by 14% in the same period. Indonesia quietly restructured its nickel export priorities, critical for EV batteries, to favor domestic processing and regional partnerships over raw material exports to American companies. These aren't isolated decisions. These are symptoms of a fundamental recalibration. What we are witnessing is the economic equivalent of friends who stop inviting you to parties. Not because they hate you, but because you've become unpredictable, financially unstable, and honestly, there are other friends who are easier to deal with. The Bank for International Settlements released data in October 2024, showing that dollar-denominated trade finance in Southeast Asia dropped 7% year-over-year, while yuan-denominated trade finance increased 23%. Translation: countries are literally choosing to do business in currencies other than the dollar because it reduces their exposure to American economic turbulence and Federal Reserve policy whiplash. And here's the part that should keep you up at night. Once these alternative trade networks and currency systems reach critical mass, they don't reverse. They compound. Every Malaysian company that shifts from Dallas to Shenzhen, every Thai exporter that opens an account in yuan instead of dollars, every Vietnamese manufacturer that prioritizes regional supply chains over trans-Pacific ones. These are defections from an economic alliance that America assumed was permanent. It's not. Section 4.4. What this means for you. The consequences. Nobody's preparing for. So let's bring this home to your kitchen table, your job, your 401k. Because this isn't abstract economics. This is your life in 24 to 36 months if these trends continue. When Southeast Asian suppliers deprioritize American buyers, the immediate effect is cost. A 2024 analysis by the Federal Reserve Bank of San Francisco found that supply chain diversification away from China increased manufacturing input costs by an average of 4.3% for American companies. Now layer on Southeast Asian deprioritization, and you're looking at another 2-4% depending on the sector. That might sound small, but in industries operating on 5 to 8% margins, that's the difference between profitability and layoffs. The consumer electronics you're planning to buy this year? More expensive. The automotive components that keep American car factories running? Delayed and pricier. The medical devices, industrial equipment, telecommunications hardware, everything with a Made in Malaysia sticker somewhere in its supply chain just got more complicated. But here's the deeper, more insidious consequence. Brain drain and investment flight. When Malaysia signals that its economic future is more aligned with China and regional partners than with the United States, American companies face a choice. Accept higher costs and lower priority, or move operations closer to where the action is. And they're choosing door number 2. According to the Rhodium Group's investment tracking data, American foreign direct investment into Southeast Asia dropped 18% in 2024, while European and Chinese investment increased. We're not just losing trade relationships, we're losing the physical presence, the partnerships, the institutional knowledge that took decades to build. Meanwhile, Malaysian graduates from MIT and Stanford are increasingly returning home or heading to Singapore and Shanghai instead of staying in the US, because they see where the opportunities are flowing. The Commerce Department's own data shows a 23% decline in H-1B visa renewals from Malaysian professionals since 22. That's engineers, researchers, entrepreneurs, the exact people America needs to maintain technological leadership, voting with their feet. This isn't a trade spat. This is a long-term reordering of global economic gravity, and America is on the wrong side of the shift. What Malaysia just did is a warning shot, not an act of war. It's a signal that the world economy is reorganizing itself around new centers of gravity. New partnerships, new assumptions about who's stable and who's chaotic, who's a reliable partner and who's a volatile risk. And right now, America is being quietly recategorized. The question isn't whether you believe this is happening. The data is undeniable. The question is what you're going to do with this information while there's still time to adapt, prepare, and position yourself for the economic reality that's coming. If this analysis opened your eyes to something the mainstream media isn't covering, do 2 things right now. Drop a comment and tell me if you think America can reverse this trend, or if we're watching the beginning of a permanent shift. And second, subscribe and hit that notification bell, because this channel exists to decode the economic signals that will determine your future before they become tomorrow's crisis. There are 3 more videos on this channel right now that connect directly to what you just learned. Click the next one, keep watching, and stay ahead of the collapse that nobody else is talking about. The game is changing. Make sure you're not the last one to notice.